It's like I haven't seen a Monty live in a long time.
Yeah, things in the last couple of weeks have been kind of weird, to be honest.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, that's valid. That's valid. I mean, although to be completely fair, my life is just straight up weird in itself. But
Mm.
no, like it was weird having an Area 70 call me.
Why'd they call you?
Um, Basically, I had an idea of, hey, I want to be able to do a video that is official church communication,
Hmm.
and it's about, hey, are you a missionary? Are you about to come home? Well, guess what? This is what it looks like. And this is the process that happens. That was the original idea. It got up to my Area 70, who called me and said, hey, Elder Allred, I think this is a great idea, and I think you should take it a step further, and you can, and when you do these interviews with return missionaries, ask them about this program we've been doing, the My Plan program.
Hmm.
And I want to see how successful it is. And anything that isn't going right, or anything that isn't working, we're just going to get rid of and replace it. So that conversation was weird.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Oh, Rob. Let me ask you this, Rob. Is this how Jesus of Nazareth would act?
What Rob doesn't understand is we've gone through this false prophecy stuff so
Hmm.
much, and it's like we have prophets in the Bible that have said stuff that didn't come true, you know. So that doesn't mean anything to us,
Yeah.
Rob. Means nothing.
And the thing is that like which is unfortunate because I saw his interview on the Why I Stay podcast, and honestly, I wish I could believe what he said. I wish I could believe it. Mainly because of my personal interactions with you, Rob. I really wish that I could believe what you said during that interview. Um, because the the interactions that I and several others have had on this platform with you have shown that honestly, despite your claims of being an honest actor, you really truly aren't. And I honestly don't know if Corinne has actually seen your content on TikTok. I honestly wonder that if she had, she would have a very different tune about who you are as well. Orson Pratt went to Palestine and dedicated it.
See,
There's no dispute about that.
he can't even answer, like say anything to refute what you're saying.
Hmm.
He just continues with his.
Because you're not interested in the issues, Rob, at least not truly, not honestly. You've shown your character multiple times. You don't believe that you've admitted straight out that you don't believe that Jesus is the Christ. You don't believe he's the Messiah. And so the issue at hand is all of this. And honestly, like you're checking off all the boxes on our bingo cards, honestly. And Rob, I'm actually familiar with and source that was that its earliest documentation didn't come from Orson Pratt, didn't come from Joseph. It came from folks who ultimately left the church. There's no firsthand source. That's the issue at hand, Rob. You need to be able to produce a firsthand source from either Joseph or Orson that specifically states what you're trying to assert here. Jude, how does the Book of Mormon contradict the Bible? In fact, why don't you pop on up here and plead your case?
Bible contradicts itself, just saying.
You know what? I am going to give Jude a personal invite up here. Give the thumbs a break, and let's see what you have to say. The thing is that Rob defames his own character. He's lied about himself, about his intentions, at least as far as his channel is concerned. He is not honest about who Jesus is. He doesn't even believe that Jesus is the Christ. He doesn't believe he's the Messiah. He's flat out said that. I'm not saying this in an effort really to defame his character. I'm using his own words verbatim. This is what he said about himself. This is what he does.
I'm sorry. Was I actually breathing that hard? Sam said that you guys could hear my breathing.
I couldn't tell. Honestly, I was too focused here. No, I do defend the church's truth claims, but I defend them also from honest actors. Rob is not an honest actor. Sorry, I like I said, I wish I could believe Rob when he went in on the Why I Stay podcast. I do. I really wish that he. Hey, Logic.
Hey, Lion, how's it going, guys?
Doing all right. I caught a little bit of that debate you had with that one guy.
Yeah, just finished.
If you
Right
want,
on,
I
man.
screen recorded the entire thing.
Wow, that's got to be a lot of storage on your phone.
I have no idea.
Wow, well, that sounds awesome. I don't know. It might be too big of a video to send, I think.
I don't know.
I would love to actually have that posted on my YouTube, honestly.
Yeah,
Get
he
some
was a great guy.
cross-promotion on there.
I really enjoyed
47
speaking with him.
47 minutes.
Not
Wow.
bad. That's not bad.
Well, thank you so much for recording it.
Yeah, there might be some pop-ups of comments here and there, so...
So, I thought one thing was interesting was how I brought up this doctrine that he's like, oh, that's not in the Bible. I'm like, well, you agreed that it doesn't have to be in the Bible for something to be true. And then he's like, yeah, well, as long as it doesn't contradict or whatever. But in the chat, everyone was saying, oh, he's saying there can be truth outside the Bible. That's heresy, blah, blah, blah.
One thing for these folks, the one thing that always trips them up that I've noticed is where does the Bible say that there should be no more scripture?
Mm-hmm.
Invariably they'll pull out Deuteronomy 4, Revelation 22. It's like, well, hold on a second. If the ancient Israelites took Deuteronomy 4 to be the same thing that you're trying to assert them to mean, there wouldn't be any book of Joshua, much less any of the New Testament. So that doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
Explosive Smith. It's not the fact that he disagrees. It's not the fact that Rob disagrees that I call him a dishonest actor. There have been plenty of people who I disagree with who I actually claim are honest actors. When people go out of their way to act in a dishonest manner, like the way that Rob does, and to continually do things and to not like having a mirror held up to them, that's when they're no longer an honest actor. And that is how Rob is described. Oh, tell me you haven't actually read the Book of Mormon or the Late War without telling me.
Yeah.
So Jakey, Jakey, what Rob did, he came in and started talking about like supposed false prophecies Joseph made about Thomas Ford and that he was going to drink wine with Orson Hyde in Palestine. There's no firsthand documentation of any of these prophecies, any kind of, because I have heard of them, I have actually read them. Nothing from Orson or from Joseph firsthand suggest that he ever made those prophecies. These were all second, third-hand sources and that are somehow being taken as gospel truth. There's nothing firsthand from Joseph regarding it. And so that's the first act of dishonesty there. He wasn't willing to even, ex, you know, willing even to listen to that, right? Um, you can pretty much get anything off of the Internet Archive, Raja. Internet Archive's a treasure trove. And while the Lit War may have come first, it is not it's not necessarily there's no evidence that Joseph even had access to it. First-hand sources, when looking at historical documentation, are typically the best way to go about it. Yes, it's not not that narrow of a box. Now, if there are no first-hand sources, multiple second and third-hand sources are required in order to do that. But those second and third-hand sources must also be consistent with each other. Okay. Now, this is what would happen when it comes to history, right? Because when it comes to things like evidence, it might help, like especially in a court of law, but historical evidence can only be really rectified, especially with the written word, if we have first and second hand accounts. Yeah, you can come up here, Fraud. That's okay.
Someone in the chat, Exmo Smith says, "Hey Logic, while we're at it, I think you blocked me. I can't see your profile. Why?" So actually, my method, I guess, is you're free to disagree as much as you want, because it really helps with the engagement and views. But when you mock what I hold sacred, that's when I block.
Uh-huh.
So in a court of law, 666 Exmo, the standard is first-hand accounts. That's the thing. In a court of law, hearsay is often objected to and often sustained as not admissible in court. So hearsay accounts very rarely will ever get passed in courts.
Yep, and also it's when people really start to treat you like a child that really gets on my nerves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can be. So, I mean, yeah, he does have a point. You can be, but it's very difficult to do so without first-hand accounts. The only time when you don't really need any witness statements in a court of law is if you have evidence against you.
Yep.
If the evidence is there, you don't need witness statements. But if the evidence is either circumstantial or isn't quite as airtight, then you do need witness statements. And the only type of witness statements, especially in criminal law, that is truly admissible are first-hand eyewitness testimony.
Can I ask a question just totally unrelated to what's going on?
Go ahead.
So I'm trying to figure out, I know that I can go live from my computer, like with TikTok Live Studio. I'm trying to figure out if I can join live streams from my computer.
Not as a guest. Not as a guest, unfortunately. I have a Mac, so I can't do TikTok Live Stream Studio, so...
Dang it, dude, that sucks. Okay, I guess I'll just be hosting. Man, it's like, I can join from my phone, but I just want better audio quality and better control.
No, I get it, and I totally do. I kind of want to do that, too. I've kind of found a workaround on Mac using OBS. Because I haven't gone live on my OBS for so long, at least not on TikTok, my live access on that has been taken away for a month.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm debating, because I used to be able to simulcast both on YouTube and on TikTok at the same time. I need to have people kind of come up as guests, but they would have to leave TikTok in order to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the interesting thing. It's video.ninja. So I think that's kind of the way that I've been kind of doing it. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Other Jakey in the chat. So something that's one of my pet peeves that not you didn't do this. It just you brought up something about church culture is they like to bring up this story about Joseph Smith not drinking alcohol during his leg surgery. And I don't like that the church brings that up, because it makes it sound like, oh yeah, he didn't want to drink alcohol, whatever. But he drank alcohol later in his life because the word of wisdom wasn't a commandment. So I'm like, why do we emphasize this story so much? I mean, like,
Yeah.
he like went through a trial at a young age.
It's a lot like the Thomas Marsh cream story that
Yeah.
gets brought up all the time. Like, that's not why the Marshes ultimately left the church. It wasn't the cream thing. There was a lot of other issues at play here, but yeah,
Hmm.
whatever. Bye, Fraud.
Oh, ex Moso Smith. Yeah, I don't remember what it was that prompted me to block you in the first place. So
All
sorry.
right. No, you're good. Question from Noah. I got a question I want your thoughts on. Can you read Alma 7, 9, and 10 and clarify it? All right, well, let's see what Alma 7, 9, and 10 has to say. Let me go and pull up.
Alright. Alright.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, I know what's going on here. But behold, the Spirit has said this much unto me, saying, Cry unto this people, saying, Repent ye, and, prepare the way of the Lord, and walk in his paths, which are straight. For behold, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and the Son of God cometh upon the face of the earth. And behold, he shall be born of Mary at Jerusalem, which is the land of our forefathers, she being a virgin, a precious and chosen vessel, which shall be overshadowed and conceived by the power of the Holy Ghost, and bring forth a son, yea, even the Son of God. So I'm guessing, Noah, you're wanting clarification on the whole born at Jerusalem.
Yeah, that's the part that Joseph Smith got wrong when he was writing the Book of Mormon.
The
Everything
funny
else
thing
is
is,
true, though.
yeah, the funny thing is that like people want to stop born of Mary at Jerusalem, but then don't want to continue the rest of the sentence. I mean, there's not even any punctuation there. Born of Mary at Jerusalem, which is the land of our forefathers, the land of our forefathers. So,
Also, fun
I mean,
fact: when you look up the word "at" from an 1820s dictionary, it's synonymous with near.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
and
it's like, if I say that I lived in Seattle, I didn't live in Seattle proper, but I lived closer to a city called Everett. People near Washington, like in the state of Washington, know where Everett is, but outside of Washington, you have no idea where Everett's at. So you just say you're from Seattle.
Same goes for people who live in Philly. Like, I
Hmm.
spent 10 years of my life in Broomall, but no one's ever heard of Broomall, so I just said I lived in Philly.
Yeah, nobody would know what Bethlehem is if Jesus wasn't born there. Like now it's famous and everyone's heard of Bethlehem. But it's this small town, just a few miles away. You could walk there from Jerusalem.
Yeah, like six
So,
miles to the southeast.
and if you think about who the audience is when this verse was being written, they were writing this on the opposite side of the globe. So because he's like, well, this city's 5 miles away, that's close enough.
Hmm.
It's like, what does it matter to these people on the other side of the world?
And the thing is that they had like a vague understanding of where Jerusalem was at, even though they may not necessarily knew exactly where it was, because that's part of their history, right? I mean, Lehi and his family were living in Jerusalem when they came over, so they kind of had that understanding. But yeah, like you said, Bethlehem, about 5, 6 miles away. Yeah. And the thing is, though, is that Joseph would have known, especially as he was born in Bethlehem. He studied the Bible relentlessly, especially as he was younger. Now, he didn't have a personal Bible until roughly about 6 months after the book was printed, or after the translation was complete. Yeah, he didn't get a personal Bible until October 1829. Um, but he still knew it. He still knew, at the very least, the nativity story. So Yeah. Okay, here's one thing. Maybe you guys can answer this question because this is one of the things that honestly just kind of I still can't help but scratch my head at this. What is people's issues with Freemasonry, with the Freemasons? What are people's
Oh,
issues with them?
I know. I can tell you that one. So there's this top tier Freemason. He was like in the top council of the elders, whatever.
Hmm.
And apparently he left Freemasonry and he's like, once you get to the top, they tell you this whole time you're worshiping Satan. And so now people equate Masonry with Satanism. But first of all, there's no worshiping in Freemasonry. Um, and second of all, that's not true. Because and that's just kind of like someone leaving the Latter Day Saint, and saying, "Oh, it's a cult," and everyone's like, "Well, this former member says so, so it must be true." So I
Hmm.
think they associate it that way. But so yeah, that's why I think it gets a bad rep. But the interesting thing is, I've always been curious, like how did the Freemasons like get it so close? Like how did they like? How could they possibly have the knowledge they have and it be similar to our temple ceremonies? And so then I looked up different groups throughout time that held these esoteric truths to see if I could trace it back, and I think I did it.
Okay.
And so the Freemasons got it from the medieval stonemason guilds in the 12th century, and they got it from the Knights Templar, and they got it from the Byzantine monastic builders, and they got it from Second Temple Jews, and then from there it's all connected to Jewish tradition.
Okay.
Do we need to hire Nicolas Cage for a?
No, probably not. But the thing is though too is that like a lot of people will say like, oh, Joseph copied it, but the problem is that the only way you could say that Joseph copied the Freemasons as opposed to really the other way around would be if you only take the time where the endowment was revealed in a vacuum. Meanwhile, you have all of these other instances, like from the Kirtland Temple, stuff that's in the Book of Mormon, like going all the way back to even 1829, that is actually in the temple, in the endowment ceremony, in the initiatory, that, it did happen to coincide with him, but Joseph had no idea what the Masons even did until he got to Nauvoo. And so, how did Joseph know all of this stuff that would eventually be part of the temple ordinances prior to even joining the Freemasons?
I've actually asked that same question, and the response I got was that he was associating with those who were already Freemasons. Like I think his dad was one.
Hmm.
But to add on to what you're saying, one of the witnesses of the gold plates pointed out that they had the compass and square etched on the first plate of the gold plates,
Hmm.
and we even see temple ceremonial like implications and sometimes more clear in the Book of Mormon, especially in the temples like King Benjamin and Jesus Christ Sermon at the Temple, and then with John Butler quoting from John Welsh, who wrote the book about the temple ceremonies in the Sermon on the Mount and Sermon at the Temple.
Hmm.
So it's already there before Masonry became part of Joseph Smith's life. And it was so intricately woven in there subtly that it's taken over a century for people to find it. So to say that Joseph Smith ripped it
And
off of the
that is
Masons, it's like, how do you
interesting,
explain
yeah.
it was already in the Book of Mormon?
Right. That and the thing is too is that like Joseph Smith Sr. being a Freemason prior to even Ohio. There's very tenuous evidence for that. Again, a lot of very weak second and third hand sources, but there's no indication that either Joseph Sr., Jr., Hiram were part of the Masons really until the Nauvoo era. And like when you take into consideration like not only what the Book of Mormon said and things like that, um, and the things like the washing and anointings in the Kirtland Temple, um, a lot of that stuff even pointed back to the Kirtland Temple, right? And so when the endowment was revealed, yeah, there were some similarities, and a lot of people were like, oh, the handshakes and the covenants were still there. No, when you look into the actual temple ceremony for the Kirtland Temple in particular, while the hand clasp may not have necessarily been there, there were elements of them there to begin with. Again, this is just studying the history of those who were there. And so when the endowment was ultimately fully revealed in May of 1842, the there all the people were like, so this is so very familiar. Some of the verbiage may be a little different, but it's ultimately like very familiar from what we already did in Kirtland.
I actually taught a Mason on my mission, and he was really wanting to preserve the things in the Masonic lodges that
Hmm.
he was not supposed to reveal outside, and he did accidentally say that they put these robes on, and including an apron, and I got really excited about that. Like, really? He's like, oh, shouldn't like at Hagrid, He's like, oh, I should not have said that, and so then I'm like, well, what does the apron symbolize? He's like, well, I can't tell you. I'm like, well, tell you what, I'll just make one guess. If I'm right, you can say yes. If not, I'll drop it. Is that okay? He's like, okay. Like, does the apron symbolize the apron given to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden? And he was like, what? No. Like, oh, okay.
Okay,
Anyway.
right. And that is the well because that I think is the interesting thing. I mean, I forget who it was now, but I remember speaking with someone who was both a Mason and a member of the church, and they said that like when it comes to the symbolism and the um uh everything that is associated with the Freemasons, at best the similarities are really on the surface level. Um
Yeah.
and everything else is completely vastly different. Um the symbolism, the promises made, like everything is just very different from each other. And so it's again, it's interesting that people will want to try to claim that. I mean, seriously, like we want people to be able to go to the temple. We want people to be able to experience, what the endowment has to offer. But just there are some things that need to be done first, like for instance, getting baptized. Um, but that's the thing. You know that yeah, and 666 Exmo, trying to say that the hand clasps are the signs of fellowship are identical, again, that's not true at all. I would recommend that you try to find someone who is both a Freemason and a member of the church, an active member of the church,
Hayden
and
Carroll.
ask them, yeah, and they would say no. They're the similarities at best are surface level. The hand clasp, the signs of fellowship, they're not even that similar. But you got to be able to look at that. So again, take that extra step and do that. There was someone who asked a question regarding Doctrine and Covenants. Uh, let's see here. Where's that comment? Oh. Noah asked, another question I have about Doctrine and Covenants 9329. I read some things in the Bible that seemed off. It is a matter of the creation of souls in the premortal life. Uh, Going on here, like Colossians 1:17. All right, so here's what Doctrine and Covenants 93 uh, says here. Let me find the actual verse again. Sorry, one second. So Doctrine and Covenants 93:29. Here we go. Man was also in the beginning with God, intelligence or the light of truth, and was not created or made, neither indeed can be. So, yeah, when it comes to our spirits, we have always existed. We have always existed in some form. Now, when it comes to our bodies, yes, God had made our bodies, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we didn't exist, right? So go, yeah, go ahead. So when it comes to things like, Colossians 1, when he says that, God created the heaven and the earth, and there wasn't anything that from him that wasn't made. That is true as far as the physicality is concerned. When it comes to the spiritual side of things, those have always existed.
You know something I want to unpack with a different Christian next time in a conversation is something I brought up with God Logic was there are lots of different Christian denominations that disagree with each other on different doctrines, but they all say that their source of doctrine and truth is the same book that you hold yours to. Yet you disagree. Echoing the words of Joseph Smith, you can't just settle a question by an appeal to the Bible. So then that leaves an element of uncertainty. And so then I say you can see that now there's a chance that you could be wrong because you disagree with other Christians who get their truths from the same source as you. But every Christian I talk to, they say, no, I'm not wrong. I'm reading exactly what the Bible says. Like, that's what the other guy says too. So how can we know who is right? And if there's like one true denomination, so anyway, I find it, I guess, not insultingly, but I guess I do find it a little bit arrogant that they'd say, well, I'm right, and all the other thousands of denominations are wrong, so how do you know you're right? Well, for the same reason they know they're right too. Whereas it's kind of circular. Whereas us, we say, oh, I know I'm right because God told me. I received that witness. So that's what I think makes us unique. But I try to make sense of it with other Christians.
Yeah. So Noah, I'm going to give you. I'm actually going to have you personally come up, so that way you can kind of give your thumbs a break, and we can kind of have a little bit more of a conversation with this. So, or not. I mean, you don't have to come up, I guess. I would like to have you come
Is
up so
he?
that way we can. Yeah, he's the one who's asking the questions here. I mean, he asked about both the Alma 7 and Doctrine and Covenants 93. So
Well, is he in Utah? Because he could probably come over to your house.
I'm not exactly in a place where people can reach easily. So
Hey guys.
how you doing, Felix?
Felix.
Hey, yeah, normally I don't, yeah, so I guess I'm going to try one of these lives. I know I get frustrated with people who are constantly, um, I don't know what you could say, want to argue. Um, but I mean, there's a lot of questions here that I'm seeing people are asking about the temple. Vincent, I think, um, wanting to know why we have to pay and stuff like that. I just want to say, and I'm just going to go along. We have a temple interview. Some people don't have jobs. If you don't have a job, you're not going to pay tithing. So
Me.
it doesn't mean keep them out of the temple. So, and one of the things I think people don't understand is that when you go to the temple, it's a big deal to take out your endowment. You need to be ready for that because everything that you know and understand, um, it's a big deal to take out your endowment. You need so that is why it is what it is. And I just want to know from Vincent, He says he's trying to get every point of view. I'm not sure what point of view he's trying to get. I was just going to suggest maybe if he wants to come up and explain himself. I'm just curious. I just see him in the comments asking a lot of questions about the temple.
Yeah. We already, it's like frisbee golfer, you came in at the wrong moment. We already talked about the handshake. Um, let's see here. Uh, the scripture I meant to mention was 1 Corinthians 15:46, which was quite a confusing verse. Let's see. It says, "Howbeit that was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural, and afterward that which is spiritual." Um, oh, okay. So this is still talking about the resurrection. The entirety of chapter 15, or really 1 Corinthians overall, is talking about the resurrection. So that's the lens I think we need to look at it through. How is this pertaining to the resurrection? Um, so, like, especially in starting in verse, uh, we'll say starting in verse 39, all flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of beasts, another of fishes, and another of birds. There are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial, but the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of terrestrial is another. There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars, for one star differs from another star in glory. So also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown in corruption and raised in corruption. It is sown in dishonor, and it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. There is a natural body, and there is a spiritual body. And so it is written, the first man, Adam, was made a living soul, and the last Adam was made a quickening spirit. Howbeit that was not first uh, which is spiritual, but that which is natural, and afterward that which is spiritual. So it is specifically referencing the resurrection here and talking about how, you know, our natural bodies are going to die, but through spiritual means, our spirits and our bodies are going to be, connected forever and never part again. That's all right, Vincent. I mean, you're welcome to come back, and honestly, I'd much rather you up here on the panel so that way you can, kind of interact a
Yeah,
little bit more.
I'd like to know what it is he's talking about too. Um, he's I was just kind of looking through some of these comments. I just like to know about from some of these people what it is that they gain from. I don't know if you want to call it being disrespectful, asking questions that they know what the answers we're going to give them. I just want to know what they're getting from that. What is their motive?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Well, it depends on who you speak to, right? Like for a lot of ex-Mormons that I've interacted with, like it runs the gamut, right? There are some people who like have left the church and be like, yeah, I don't like it. I'll speak out against it because there are some aspects I think are harmful, but for the most part, I'm just going to be chill. Um, the and then there are some that are like, I want to see it burn, right? Um, and a lot of people will be like, burn it the f down. But because it has some negative connotations, especially with the rise of anti-Mormon vandalism and violence, um, a lot of these folks, despite the fact that they're cheering this on, will add on with truth to that statement. So it's burn it the f down with truth, despite the fact that there's very little truth, and whatever truth is there is spun to beyond recognition. Um, the circumstance here too is the apologetics is exactly why people are lost. It's a bad premise. Here's one thing that I will kind of say to that. You're right, but not in the way that you think you are, 666XMO. When it comes to apologetics, with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because it isn't quite as organized or as, for lack of a better term, um, a lot of the issues that people have had when leaving the church has been because of that apologetics. Um, and attempting to discount things or sidestep a few things and things like that. I will admit that I have been kind of subject to that. I'm not going to say that I'm like the best apologist out there, or any of the other pro LDS content creators are either. Um, but at the same time, there is something to be said about the counsel that's given in Second Nephi 9:29. There's nothing wrong with learning as much as you can, but if you do it without hearkening to the counsels of God, then you're going to drift every which way. That's why you have folks like Blair Ostler that honestly, like, despite his fame, I'm kind of glad that the fame is waning, but I do not have a lot of uh, uh, I don't have a lot of respect for Blair Ostler and his apologetics or his approach to it. Um, so yeah, so I think that's kind of the issue there. Um, and in some respects, I think you're right. Apologetics does kind of start from I have the truth bias, but then again, so does pretty much every kind of philosophy and worldview. Even ex-Mormons kind of start like there is such a thing as ex-Mormon apologetics, and that's kind of what you're engaging in right now, and that's kind of what you're going after too. And so we do have to be very careful about that because there is such a thing as cognitive bias and whatnot. And I do think that a lot of apologists, regardless of what stance there um, is we have to be willing to recognize that. So I know it's kind of a long about way, but the church does not do a very good job at providing that apologetic stance. It does great when it comes to the ecclesiastical and the spiritual and the ministering side of things. It does fantastic with that on a general scale. But when it comes to the apologetic side of things, it's very weak.
Um, can I just throw something out? I don't know if this might be the reason why. It's because I think a lot of members haven't been on the other side before. A lot of us have. When I joined the church, I was not active for quite a few years. So I've seen the other side of things. So maybe that makes a difference when we're sharing the gospel because we've seen both sides.
Oh,
Um, I don't know if that means something different or not.
and
Well, and
Braxton,
I do, yeah. I you saw Braxton's comment too, didn't you, Devin?
yeah, it's like the church doesn't say don't research it.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, this is the and what I think is funny is that when they say like, "Oh, don't research it," I think they forget, and this goes the same with some members too, that the entire foundation of the restoration is James 1:5 and 6. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, the giver of all men liberally. So nowhere does it say not to question. Nowhere does it say that we shouldn't be researching it. Um, and I think that's kind of the issue there. Patrick, there is evidence for the Book of Mormon. Um, the but the thing is, though, is that if you're basing your testimony on the truthfulness of each book, despite there being evidence for it, it's kind of on shaky ground. Physical evidence and the physicality of certain things can ultimately change. See, at least 666 Exmo is consistent with that statement. I will say that. Well, it's not just South America, Noah. It's pretty much the entire Western Hemisphere. The focus on South America, I think, is a bit of a misnomer, and I think it's useful, but I think it's only half of the equation. Oh, they've actually found horse remains that they've actually been able to carbon date to roughly about the Book of Mormon times. 2022, the Journal of Science, or the Texas Journal of Science, posted a paper about horse remains in Mexico City. There's also Clovis, New Mexico, where they found horse remains. They're able to. to Columbus coming. And then there's somewhere in Virginia. I wish I could remember where exactly that site is. But yeah, they found horse remains that, are like stallions that could be ridden. But they're not the same. Is it genus or species that's above the other? I'm trying to remember here.
Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
Okay,
Huh?
so yeah, okay. So it's species. So yeah, it's not technically the same species as the European stallion, but it is kind of the same approach there. So
So, what's his Patrick? Patrick, he's saying the test of a prophet, according to Deuteronomy, by the way, is to see if a prophecy comes to pass. Lots didn't from early Joseph Smith. Not true. I can't think of a single prophecy that
it's
did
good
not
for
come to
you.
pass. So, Patrick, the
Yeah.
reason why you believe that his prophecies did not come to pass is because people have been lying to you and you gullibly believed them without doing the research yourself. So, the assassination of the governor. Yeah, okay, he was shot several times. Okay. His prophecy was probably a vision of him getting shot several times, and he's like, well, there's no way he's going to survive that.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember if I made a video on it, but I'm pretty sure I made a video about Joseph Smith and some of his prophecies. And if I remember correctly, one of his prophecies was Civil War, right?
Yeah, he prophesied a civil war.
Let's see here.
He prophesied it 10 years before it started. And Cheese asked, do you need to heavily interpret a prophecy to have it make sense? I would apply the same standard of Jesus' prophecies and any other biblical prophecy to the prophecies of Joseph Smith. If you hold a double standard, then that's where you are faulty. But you got to hold them to the same standard, and then they pass.
Yep.
So I'm inviting both Cheese and Patrick up. Let's see if they actually accept those invitations, because honestly, they have some interesting things to do. I kind of want to get a good conversation instead of replying just to comments.
And I wanted to comment with the one that's asking about how much does it cost to get to third tier of heaven. I don't know if I want to make a joke about that or I mean, I'm not exactly sure why he's asking that question. I'm
It's a
pretty
lot
sure
more.
I'm pretty sure Heavenly Father does not need our money.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the question's for, and I'm pretty sure he knows the answer.
It costs a lot more than you think. In fact, Jesus said you have to give up your whole life.
Right.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this video. Be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you know when new videos drop. Also, I've started compiling an Amazon list of book recommendations if you're curious what I've been reading when it comes to the information I use for these videos. Check out the link tree in my bio for more.